Meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3:02, Thursday afternoon, September 22nd. And this is our regular meeting before the budget hearings later on. So we'll start as all council members are present except for Councilman Allers, who is present by Zoom. The town attorney, the town manager, the town clerk, members of the public are here. We'll start with the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
As we discuss the business of the town today, help us to keep focused on what is best for the good of all, not just for some or all one. Remembering that our labors are with the vision of continuing to build the town of Fort Myers Beach into the best place that it can possibly be for residents, visitors, and businesses alike. It is with gratitude that we serve in these positions of authority that have been entrusted to us by the people of the town, guiding us in listening, interpreting, and deciding well. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Before we get underway here, I just want to make a brief PSA here for the town. We've been very fortunate so far this summer with the storm situation here, Southwest Florida and all of Florida for that matter. But as is always the case, we've reached the peak of the hurricane season, and as always, Mother Nature has not let us down. There are a few storms out there. One in particular that we're watching down in the Caribbean. They're not quite sure yet where it's going to go, but this is a good time for everyone to check their kits, their hurricane kits, check their plans, make sure they know what their plans are in case of a storm, check your flashlights, your batteries, and so forth and so on. If this thing materializes, whatever it's going to be, it won't be until for about a week or so, but it's just a good time to be on our toes and start paying attention again. Okay, we'll move on. The next item is the approval of the final agenda. Is there a motion to approve the final agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. The next item is public comment. Madam Clerk.
Before we have public comment,
Yes.
I don't know if Dan can hear us or,
Yep, I sure can. Can you hear me?
yeah, I wanted to make sure. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you for checking.
How come we don't see your picture?
You probably don't want to see that mug.
There you are. You're fully clothed? Okay.
Well, yeah.
All right.
Ready?
Go right ahead.
All right. First up is Tim Shadle.
Good afternoon, council, secretary, manager, attorney, and staff. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for all the time and dedication you put into this town. And contrary to some of the things I hear and read, I know every one of you is dedicated to making this town better. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
My first and maybe only issue I'll have time to address is in reference to the short-term rental registration and associated fees. The initial short-term rental registration and fee of $50 was proposed and passed to assist in enforcing illegal rentals, noise, and public safety reasons, along with paying for administration for registering of the properties and dealing with problems from complaints arising from short-term rentals. That now is expanded to include affordable workforce housing. The cause is admirable and is a problem here on our island as well as throughout the country. I truly have mixed feeling as to how to raise the money and to accomplish this admirable cause, but somehow, some way, the problem does need to be addressed, and our town council has now made the decision and commitment to try to do something to assist in resolving this problem. I do feel that there should have been a plan before introducing and passing the raise of fees from $50 to $300 per year, and now an additional $100 per year per bedroom, but since that ship has sailed, now is the time to address ideas and implementation. I feel that immediately there should be a committee organized to talk about ideas, then pass them on to town council for consideration. I do have one idea, but first I'll address something that I hope will spur the council to take another look at who should be contributing to the fees so we could significantly increase the revenue stream and start assisting the workers here on the island rather than just collect and bank the money. Right now, hotels contribute zero to this fund, yet contribute greatly to the problem. The hotels require exponentially more workforce than any other business here on the island, yet in the current plan, they contribute nothing to the process, which I feel absolutely should be relooked at by council. No matter if you are a single-family homeowner, multifamily homeowner, as I am, condo owner, or hotel, there should be contribution by all. Right now, many condo owners pay nothing towards the fees because it's allowed for the condo association to only pay one $300 fee, not each short-term rental owner in the association. I really think that the council should change how it was initially passed and charge every short-term renter, no matter if a homeowner or in a condo association, plus receive some contribution from hotel owners as well. The condos can be policed with the assistance of other concerned people who live in the condo units full-time, as they all know who rents short-term, and most who live there full-time don't really like the short-term rentals. Condos can also be policed just as it's done now, with town staff searching websites like Airbnb, VRBO, and many other sites to find the units that are listed on a short-term basis. Can I just finish the last paragraph? Is it okay? Now, for one suggestion, for some immediate relief to workers that fall within a yet to be determined income level, ask owners of units, whether home or condo, to participate in a subsidized rental program in which they get the same rent as they would by renting short-term. The worker would pay a significantly reduced rent with the town subsidizing the difference. Maybe give the owner some sort of incentive to participate. The prerequisite would be the worker must fall within a certain income bracket, plus agree to rent and live here annually, not just for the season months. At least that could be a start and be implemented quickly once there are significant funds accumulated. Other ideas, if the town wished to actually build units, the town could use some land on Bay Oaks and build on the lot that once was slated for the Upland facility to build multifamily units. Council could increase density on some island properties to incentivize owners to build units, but put restrictions on what they can charge and require the renters to be workers on the island that fall into a certain income bracket. There also is a need for units for workers that work only during the winter months, so that also needs to be looked at. But that's why I suggest the committee be organized immediately so people can make suggestions and give input so we can come up with ideas, present to council so we can get something done. Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you again for your service.
Thank you.
Tom Holavis. After Tom will be John R. King.
Good afternoon, council members. I just want to just make a statement. In regards to the raise of the vacation rental fees, as the other gentleman said, that they were only $50 last year. They went up to $300, and now you're imposing the additional $100 per room or per bedroom. Our company, Distinctive Beach Rentals, actually manages 400 vacation rentals here on the beach. We employ about 45 employees, and with that increase of the fees, we're going to be contributing almost $250,000 a year in vacation rental fees. And I just wish that you guys had a better plan on what the money's going to be used for as much as that we're going to be contributing to it. And I understand that there's inflation, and you guys need to make more money to pay for things in the city or the employee housing and that kind of thing. But we have the inflation affects us too. Our employee wages have gone up. Our rents have gone up. They've tripled, where we've had to downsize our staffing. We've had to downsize some of our other staffing that drove in from Lehigh Acres because of our inflation costs. And I just really think that you need to think about that additional $100. The $300 still was a lot, but On average, our average homeowner is going to be spending almost $800 a month or $800 a year to register their property. So please rethink redoing that fee. Thank you.
Thank you.
John R. King. After Mr. King is Rosanna Riley.
John R. King, 8402 Estero Boulevard. It was 3.5 months ago when in this room, you were told by the town manager that the town could continue to provide the same level of services with no millage rate increase. He also mentioned the town had $2.1 million for council initiatives. Since then, the millage rate is on the verge of being increased from 0.95 to 0.99. Town fees for Bay Oaks, weddings, personal watercraft, parasailing, beach furniture, and short-term rentals have all increased. We're told these fees haven't gone up in 11 years. Well, whose fault is that? The blame lies with some in this room. You've been here. You're hurting these businesses financially. If the businesses aren't here, you won't be either. Short-term rentals have been told their increases are decimal dust and had their increases quietly snuck through. Nothing like transparency to make the taxpayer feel good about their government. Decimal dust? Not to those who are annual visitors to our island and help support our businesses. They'll now be priced out and will go elsewhere. You have residents that currently pay more in taxes and fees than they've made off their vacation rentals. You're going to force these small local businesses to sell out to large off-island companies. Fees have gone from supposedly covering town costs to becoming revenue generators. As for the millage rate increase, your highlighted homestead properties that will see a very slight increase. Who represents and speaks for taxpayers who pay but don't have a vote? I am, and I will. Keep in mind that numerous condo owners are experiencing huge increases in their maintenance fees, as well as special assessments to meet new state laws. The town brags that when benchmarked against other municipalities, we're number 10 for the lowest millage rate. And even with this increase, we'll be number 11. Maybe it's just me, but 10th or 11 is not best in class and not worth bragging about. We should be shooting for number 1, and that's the lowest in Florida. Thank you.
Rosanna Riley. After Rosanna is Judy Audio.
Hi, I'm Rosanna Riley, a Realtor on the beach, and I own vacation rentals. First, again, it was $50 per unit. I have 8 units in 2 buildings. Then it goes up to $300. That's not even 100% increase. And then even before you implement that and we pay that, you add another $100 per bedroom. We're going into a recession. We have inflation. I can't pass the cost of that, nor my clients, to keep raising these vacation rental rates to offset the tax increases, the insurance increases, and everything that it costs to have a house on Fort Myers Beach to be able to rent. So I think it's really unfair. And about affordable housing, I've been a landlord for over 25 years. I had over 50 units and I had affordable housings, but I didn't buy any houses on Fire Island, Long Island, so that I could put in a Section 8 $500 a month tenant. So maybe if you want the affordable housing, I'm a realtor. I'd be more than happy to sell you some property and you can pay all the costs that it keeps to keep the house on Fort Myers Beach, and you put somebody in there for $500, but don't push it on me. Thank you.
Judy Audio.
Good afternoon. I'm here also to talk about the short-term rental rates. When we originally had the plan, it seemed as though it was the fees were to cover the expenses, but now and evidently it's become a profit center for the town and primarily to build workforce housing. Workforce housing really doesn't make sense on Fort Myers Beach. It's with the property values of Fort Myers Beach, you can never really build affordable housing for the workforce. It has to go off the island. So it just really, the plan doesn't make sense, if that is a plan. But I think we need to get back to what it costs to do the short-term rentals, what expenses you have, and cover those expenses. and not use this as a profit center. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense to the property owners. It just doesn't make any sense to the renters or guests because there will be fees passed on to them. And it just is, very absurd. And I just don't know where that idea came from, but it's just a very poor idea. Thank you.
That's all I have signed up.
Yes, ma'am.
Monica Tezak, Chapel Street. I've just got a couple questions. First, I wanted to let you know that I was contacted by many short-term rental owners, and they're afraid to protest this issue with the town, with the staff, with the council. Their fear of retribution. My question is, can you please tell me why the short-term rental fee for vacations is increased? Last year, it was $50. That fee was for the administration of the registration of short-term rentals. Why has it now been increased from 700 to 1,100% increase and $300 and $100 per bedroom? Where's the justification for the increase? Where's the, let's see, where's the legal justification? A rental property is just that, a rental property, regardless of how many bedrooms. What's your justification for charging for the bedrooms? Who came up with the idea? This is an illegal tax disguised as a fee. There are 4 factors that tend to indicate that an assessment is a fee as opposed to a tax. Number 1, the assessment is imposed in forbearance of regulatory measures to address specific issue. 2, assessment is not placed in the general fund, but is used only to fund a specific purpose. 3, the assessment is imposed by the government in return for a service it provides. And 4, the assessment involves a specific charge in return for those services. We, the short-term rental owners, are not being charged in return for a service. The funds are going to the general fund, and this is an illegal taxation on a select segment of the population. I read that the increase was made up to fund housing for island workers. What workers are we talking about? Who's the workforce? Is it the town's workforce? Why aren't the hotels and the condo complexes paying for the social program? Condos pay a flat $300 per condo association, regardless of the number of the units or the bedrooms. How's that fair? If you really want to help the island workers, you would also be taxing the business establishments that use the workers, the hotels and the restaurants. Why just the individual vacation rental business? This is a discriminatory taxation against property owners of individual residences. If it was fair, the condo owners, the hotels, the motels, the bed and breakfasts who rent out or rent out part or all their residences should pay the same fee as a standalone business. Our ordinance states that condo owners can self-regulate. Well, I can self-regulate too. I live on site and I can regulate better than any condo board. If the regulation was to address absentee owners and the disruption the rentals cause, why am I, the homeowner, lumped in the same bucket? There should be an additional class of property owners like the condos who can self-regulate, and we should not be charged per unit, but per property for all. Mr. Veach said that in an interview that the town has lost staffing on the island because their homes were converted into short-term rentals. We have to provide a place for workers while keeping the vibrancy. The goal has come up.
Please wrap it up, Mrs. Tezak.
Well, let me go to the end then. You want to set the millage rates higher to cover this workforce housing. Again, why are we the taxpayers paying for someone else's housing? This is socialism, not capitalism. With the time of inflation, we all have food, gas, general necessities, plus property tax increases of at least 10%. Why would the town feel the need to burden a select few taxpayers even more?
Thank you.
There's copies for all the people.
Is there anyone else? Is there anyone? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name's Bob Oakes. I'm a part owner of Sun Palace Vacations and a vacation rental cottage owner as well. Wanted to thank you for your service and the time that y'all put into the town and for the opportunity to comment on the fee schedule. I've had over 30 years in the vacation rental business, not in Fort Myers Beach, but we're welcoming the 3rd generation of a lot of guests in those places. The vast majority of vacation rental guests are families, many of whom fall in love with Fort Myers Beach and the locations they visit. They drive a lot of the economy between the bed tax and the ad valorem taxes, and a lot of them become your future neighbors. There are impacts from vacation rentals. You can't get around that. A lot of the positive impacts are economic, but then trash, parking, and noise are the typical bad side effects. And I think the vacation rental community, the property managers, the companies want to work with you to solve those issues. But we're not the only cause of a lack of affordable housing on Fort Myers Beach. There are a lot of causes that contribute to that. We'd like to be part of the solution, but it feels like we're being singled out a bit for progressively higher increases. We want a level playing field with consistent enforcement, and we want Fort Myers Beach to be a good place to live and a good place to visit. I think you can amend your fee schedule at any point in time. That's not part of the budget process. I would ask y'all to slow down and really take a more comprehensive look at the plan for affordable housing and the fee structure for vacation rentals. It sounds like there are some inequities there with the condos and the single family houses, and see what we can do to work on the bad impacts, the negative impacts, while maintaining the positive impacts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move on. The next item is local achievements and recognitions, Vice Mayor.
I'm going to pass today because we have a lot on our plate.
And I'm going to do the same. Councilman?
The same.
Bill?
I would just congratulate Dan Allers on the wedding.
Okay. Councilman Allers, anything you want to add?
I have nothing this time.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, Councilor Reach.
Okay. There's no advisory items and reports this meeting, so we'll pass over that. Next item is the approval of minutes, September 8th, 2022 Town Council meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
No move.
Been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and second. Any discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. The next item, there's one item on the consent agenda, and that's for the special magistrate agreement. This is to authorize the town manager to renew and execute an agreement with the town's special magistrate, Mirnabel Roche, for another year, for an additional year. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item is a public hearing, and this is ordinance 22-12, the Newton Park CPD amendment. This is the second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 22-12 entitled An Ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, replacing Town of Fort Myers Beach Resolution number 09 through 24 and amending the schedule of uses for the commercial plan development zoning for the property located at 4650 Estero Boulevard, Fort Myers Beach, providing for revisions to conditions of approval and other clarifications as necessary, providing for conflict of law, Scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date. Okay,
Mr. Mayor, this
Yes, sir.
item's quasi judicial, so if any council members have any ex parte communications they want to disclose, now's the time.
anyone?
None for me.
I have none.
None.
I haven't received any since the last hearing, but I did receive an email that I disclosed at the prior hearing, I believe.
Okay,
And any witnesses will have to be sworn in. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
okay. We'll hear the staff first.
Sure. Jason Green, Community Development. I'll be brief on this. As you mentioned, one of the goals of this is to convert this from a resolution, which was 0924, to an ordinance, as we do with most of the rezonings that come through, because it's being edited. The major change to this is to the condition number 7, to modify that condition. Essentially what this does is it sets up this site to be, you already manage your sites and set policy for the use of those sites for events and those as a facility of the town for the public, so that it will continue to do that like your other facilities. So the property is zoned CPD, and so that's why we have to come back for a public hearing to amend those conditions of approval. So that's the primary function of what this is proposing to do. Do you have any questions?
Questions? Questions for Jason? None?
So I'll just provide a little background. So this is part of our efforts to increase the utilization of the beach park, to allow for additional activities there for the purposes of making the property more attractive for use. And of course, part of our overall objective of trying to have properties such as Newton, and Mount House, Bay Oaks, and others generate 25% of their operational costs, of course, and the taxpayers are kicking in 75%. So the more attractive we can make it, and the more utilization we can get of it, of course, will generate more revenue towards that overall arching goal.
Very good.
If I could mention one more thing, the findings of and conclusions of this were carried over from the resolution. So they're no different than what they were at the time of the original approval. Just for the record.
Any further questions of the staff? Thank you so very much, Jason.
Thank you.
We'll open it up to the public. Public comment? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll close that, bring it back to the council. This is the second reading. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 22-12?
I'll move to approve ordinance 22-13, isn't it? I had
There's 1-2 here.
1-2.
I'll second it. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the roll. Vice Mayor Hasselfrost.
Aye.
Mayor Murphy. Aye. Councilman Adderholt.
Aye.
Councilman Veach.
Aye.
Councilman Allers.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay. I think that's a record for a public hearing. We'll move on to the next one, ordinance 22-13, fee schedules by resolution. This is the first reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 22-13 entitled, "An Ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, establishing a new section 1 through 13 of Chapter 1 of the Code of Ordinances, Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, authorizing the adoption, amendment, and implementation of fees and fee schedules by resolution unless prohibited by state law or the town charter, providing for codification, conflict of law, scrivener's errors, severability, and providing for an effective date." The public hearing is open. Any comments by the staff?
Well, I'll provide some background. So
Okay.
the purpose of this ordinance is that in certain cases through the history of the town, fees were embedded into ordinances that created certain things. And of course, from a management and operational standpoint, that presents difficulty in keeping track of them. We typically keep track of things when the council reviews the fee schedule annually, and this basically now points the town into a process where all the fees, if they're incidentally embedded into an ordinance, would now be reviewed and managed through the annual fee schedule.
And if I'm not mistaken, and Victor, you can chime in on this if you like, for a matter of convenience, by doing it by resolution instead of ordinance, if the fees were perhaps to be changed at some point, it would be much easier and cheaper, mind you, to do it by resolution rather than by ordinance, where the ordinance would have to be changed every time you wanted to make a change.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Questions of the staff? Jim?
Yeah, I've got a quick question for Roger, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
With this, by changing this, how does this affect some of the fee schedules that are already in place within ordinances that we currently have? Does it reset the clock for them? You just use the Times Square merchants, for instance. How does this affect them?
My recollection with regard to the Times Square merchants is that there's a separate resolution for that but I could double check that and let you know by the second reading.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just have a concern, given what we just went through with the short-term rental discussion or lack thereof. This ordinance literally, although it may be well-intended, it makes it more efficient for the town to raise fees. Now, I understand the nuance here, but under the status quo, if it's in an ordinance, you want to raise the fee, you have to have 2 hearings, has to be publicly noticed. Yes, there's a cost to that, but the public then has 2 opportunities, 2 bites at the apple to be educated, to have input, to provide notice. It just seems like an odd time to do this when we've just gone through a very, I think, awkward process on the short-term rental dynamic where people don't feel as if they had proper notice, proper input. And the timing of this seems a bit tone deaf from my perspective. And I spoke at length with our town attorney about this yesterday. And I appreciate the fact that it costs money to advertise in the newspaper, but what kind of a price do you put on public input? What kind of a price do you put on notice and transparency? It seems like a small price to pay, and it's particularly to do it right now, given what we just went through. I think it's inopportune, and I think it's not well thought out, and I can't support it. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Based on Jim's comment, I guess I have a question because I was under the impression that this not only made it easier to raise the fees, but also easier to lower the fees. So
Just in my 2.5 years, we haven't had that occurrence to lower the fees, but maybe if that is indeed the case, that I'd change my tune. But it seems like all we've done is raise fees. So if that was the tradition here, maybe we could rethink that. But it doesn't seem to be the tradition thus far, at least
Well,
in my short tenure.
I have been here when we have lowered fees. We completely, for a time, took away the Bay Oaks membership fee. So we made certain things free to residents of the community, things of that nature. So I will agree that it is more unusual, but I think that this is neutral in its effect on whether it makes it faster to raise or lower.
That's a fair point.
I would also point out that my understanding is there's, at least I know, like with the jet skis and the parasailers, that it's embedded in the ordinance. I don't know how many ordinances, or even the town knows, have fees embedded in them. So if you wanted, I've heard complaints too that why are we raising fees so high when they haven't been raised for decades? Well, this is one of the reasons. This, if anything else, I think is more transparent because all the fees would be in one place. And they're not hidden in some ordinance in the depth of the code.
Any other comments?
Yeah, if I may.
I'm just going to make one comment.
Hold on, Dan, for 1 second.
Yeah. Oh, Dan, did Dan want to?
No,
say
go ahead,
something?
Roger. We'll
I was
get
just,
back to
I was just going to say that from a best practices standpoint, it should be done by resolution. Now, that doesn't mean that you can have 12 hearings if you want to on a discussion of raising or lowering any particular fee. Nothing stops you from doing that. It's just I think the point that you should consider is the exact point that Councilor Veach made up. That is that putting them in an ordinance where they're less likely to be noted and looked at creates that phenomenon where they're not being reviewed periodically by the town council and adjusted either up or down, whatever is appropriate on a regular basis, because it gets lost in the 4-inch volume of the town book of ordinances. So my suggestion to you is to consider them by resolution, and then if you all want to decide among yourselves to have 1, 2, 3, or 7 hearings before you change a fee, that's up to you.
Roger, is it difficult to have a list of ordinances that contain fees in them? Is it difficult to maintain that and monitor that?
Well, someone would actually have to read the entire code book to look for that right now, or do some type of search to see if they could find it
But
electronically.
you'd have to do it once.
Would have to be
and
done
then
once by
catalog.
somebody.
Yep, that's right. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Allers.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just a quick question. I share the same concerns as Councilor Adderholt when it comes to having 2 opportunities for the public to be able to speak to some fees. I think as we heard this morning or this afternoon, from the speakers and public comment, the way the last fee increase was handled was not done very well, if we could say it that way. I have a hard time supporting this ordinance without having the ability, as Roger said, to add some sort of wording in there that would allow that there has to be at least two public comment sessions, if you will, or two bites of the apple, as Jim had said, for the public to be able to, come in at least give their pitches to why they agree or disagree with it. To be able to just add something at the very end that wasn't advertised, that wasn't listed on any sheet that anybody had any time to research, was just bad practice, in my opinion. And in order for me to support this, I think we have to have a little better wording as to, more specific as to how many times we have to speak about raising a fee increase. I agree that it does save some money, it does save some time, does save some research time for the staff. But it's important for me to make sure that the public has as much time as they need to be able to look at what potential fee increases, because at the end of the day, it affects them more than it affects us.
And I'll tell you, my support is really not the 1 versus 2 hearings. It's just a matter of getting everything in one place. I think it just makes more sense to be considered. And if it takes two readings, that doesn't give me heartburn. As long as we're not, if we don't want to do if we want to do a cost of living increase, we wouldn't have to open up, I don't know what it is, 5, 6 different ordinances and have all those modified. That's kind of where we are now. And that's one of the reasons why I think these fees have been frozen for so long. So
One of the things, Counselor Veach, the town attorney, informed me that this was a cost-saving this was intended to be a cost-saving measure because you have to notice in the local newspapers. Well, public notice is a good thing, and having 2 hearings is a good thing. So if there's a way to modify this, that all fee increases, even though they're in a resolution, but would require 2 hearings, I could become more comfortable with the concept.
Would that be difficult to,
No, I think what we could do is, when we bring this back at the next council meeting, we can have
in addition?
an additional document that sets forth the policy that the council have in place for fee reviews and codify that.
Still by
So-
resolution, but by two hearings.
Whatever you feel is the appropriate measures to have in place before a fee gets adjusted. Again, that could be up or down. We can incorporate that, and we can start that codification along at the next hearing.
Just for the fee resolutions, just for fee resolutions.
Well, again, this body sets the rules.
Yeah, I'd hate to be
So-
hamstrung with all the other ones.
So you all can, we'll work with you between now and the next meeting to define some of the measures you'd like to see in place, and
How do you feel about that?
get those
Vice Mayor?
codified.
I have no problem with it. I had a question on an unrelated issue to that. It was brought up that someone needs to review the code and find where all the fees are. It seems that if we do this and are putting everything into a schedule, we do need to do a review of the code so that we make sure everything does get into the schedule.
Well, I think, I think that by passing this particular item, you will be well on your way to do there. And, and of course, in the course of business, as someone comes in and says, I want to pay you for X, we could do it that way versus having someone sit down and stop doing it, whatever else they're doing, and actually, read through or search through the entire code. So I'm not concerned with the fact that finding all the fees in the code as much as getting them on one list. So that makes it a lot easier for when the council is looking at adjustment, whether up and down, you could see it versus the other related things that we do and see if it sort of fits in, or whether it's creating compression in another area or adversely affecting other things, such as having the fees at one facility be $1 amount and have the fees at another facility to be a different dollar amount, and so on and so forth.
If I could just ask our counsel, and I know you're sitting in, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but could we amend our rules as part of this ordinance to require any resolution that involves a fee increase or decrease, that it be required to have 2 hearings and be properly noticed.
If your concern is adding more procedural steps to adopting a resolution as part of this, I believe that's possible. If that's your concern, I can discuss that with John before the second hearing to see how we would implement that.
If you add back in the publication notice, then you might as well be doing an ordinance because you've put everything back in that we're trying to streamline.
That's
And
fine,
I
too.
haven't met one person who has ever come to me and said, I found out about this by reading the legal notice section of the news press.
Well, in fairness.
So I just
ma-
don't think the legal notices are how people find out about stuff.
Well, in fairness, there may be some truth to that, but that's just required by state law. I mean, you have to notice these things. But the dynamic that's so important is the second hearing. When,
Yes, I don't have a problem with that.
but if you have a second hearing, you've got to notice it in the newspaper. So
Well, the
hang
notice,
on, hang on, hang
the
on.
notice will be the first hearing.
Right, so
That's going to provide the notice.
there's a difference between an official public notice versus having one hearing versus 2 hearings to change something. And I think the mayor, before I probably interrupted him, was making the point that, the reporting of the council action at the first hearing on a particular item generates the additional feedback and consideration and constituent contact, et cetera, letters to the editor or whatever may be for that second hearing. And I hear that's what you're looking for. So that there's general knowledge throughout the community that something's being contemplated to being changed before it is in fact changed. So I think going to the resolution is the right way to do it. And if you're more comfortable with one, than having one to have 2 meetings before a fee gets adjusted, I could work with John to incorporate that into the second reading of this ordinance.
I would just kind of point to that, I think that the way we're doing it now, where we're looking at this fee schedule as part of the budgetary process, has some value because you have to kind of know what revenue you have before you decide what you can spend it on. So it almost, I would suggest that we just make this part of the budget process. So we look at fees before our budget process on a schedule, so everyone knows when that's going to be.
yeah, I don't want to relitigate what happened at the last meeting, but clearly there was an expectation by some, by many, that there would be a second hearing on the short-term rental increase, proposed increase. And I know there was an attempt to accommodate Councilor Allers while he was here, to have the resolution come up while he was physically here. But, and normally the resolution for the fee increase comes at the second hearing, which added to the confusion. And it just, the concept of proposing something at a hearing, at the hearing, I know it was alluded to in advance, but the granular details were revealed at the hearing, pretty substantial details, pretty substantial public policy impact. And then with no opportunity for public input, I mean, the public comment period was over. There was no additional hearing. That's what I'm trying to avoid. I think that was really poorly executed by us, and I think we need to do better. And I think if we could embed that into our processes and our procedures, so it doesn't happen again, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
So, Councilor Adult and
The rest of the
No.
council?
and rest of the council, just so, I think you're aware of this, but just in case it may not be, in the forefront of your memories. There is a process within Robert's rules for reconsideration of something. So if you're on the prevailing side, you could ask for reconsideration. And of course, if that reconsideration receives a majority vote, then you could reconsider the item and you could then approve or not approve an item. So I want to make it clear that, there is an avenue if you want to avail yourself of it.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's sort of stating the obvious, but when when a significant public policy initiative is put forth at the meeting with very little opportunity for rebuttal, for input. A couple things, since we're going to get into this real quick, I watched what happened in Key West the other day. They had a very significant workforce housing, short-term rental discussion. The whole community was involved. They had tremendous public input. There was a great article about it in the Key West paper. Lots of suggestions were put forth, new ideas. Lots of perspectives were heard that I think will help shape the debate. People felt like they had a seat at the table, and I think we missed that opportunity. And I think it was a sad day for that. And I know you can always come back and revisit things and reconsider things, but I think it sends a message that we're not bringing people together. It pits particular interest groups against other interest groups. But if we could all sit down at the table and have a conversation, we may not ultimately agree, and certainly a lot of legitimate issues are at stake here. But I just think procedurally there has to be a better way.
Mr. Etterhold, I'm under the impression that you have a consensus to get what it is you wanted about the second hearing. Am I under a wrong impression?
No, I think I was just I was commenting on what Roger just said. His point basically was, hey, you can always revisit something later if you don't like it.
I get
But that doesn't address the concept that people feel like they didn't have an opportunity to be heard on a significant public policy initiative. That's all I'm trying to. That was my response to his comment that, well, you can always revisit things later, but it sends a message that we're not listening and people aren't welcome at the table. And I know that wasn't necessarily the intent. I hope it wasn't. But that's the message that was sent. And I think we need to work on our procedures to see that doesn't happen again.
I would just point out though, too, Councilman Adderholt, that after that meeting, the town sent out an email to everybody who has a short-term rental registration. And they were informed. They did not send out an email to everybody who lives next to a short-term rental, or everyone who doesn't have one. So, if that's the barometer of notification, I think that is just not suitable. And like Vice Mayor Hasselfrest said, that, the notice in the local newspapers doesn't really do much. It's got to be picked up by our local newspaper, or no one seems to know about it. And as you know, you've sat here on council, I mentioned this proposed increase probably 4, 5, 6 times over the course of the last year.
With the detail, the actual amount?
I did.
I must have missed that. I apologize.
All right.
Well, I can tell you that I missed it as well, but as I stated earlier, it was not listed anywhere in the fee schedule that it would be discussed. So it was an extra fee that was added that was not put anywhere in the fee schedule. So although it was brought up or alluded to in previous meetings, I don't remember ever hearing an actual dollar amount assessed to it. I do remember a conversation about it being a per room fee, but there was no discussion as to what that room fee was. But again, I go back to, it was not even listed on the fee schedule that we discussed. So I think that's what's brought us to where we're having this discussion. And if I may, since I'm talking, I have a question for Victor. It's a little broader question about this ordinance. Since we don't know where all the fees are within these ordinances, are there things that could potentially be within these ordinances that could draw some legal attention, if you will, if there's already been an agreed upon structure as to how fees would be raised to a certain group?
Councilmember Allers, this ordinance wouldn't adjust any of the fees that are already in the ordinances. So if your question is, will it affect the budget or anything like that, that would not be the case.
I guess my question was more if there was a specific slide rule or whatever you want to call it, there was a specific percentage that was agreed upon within an ordinance with a group of people that would be charged a fee, would that still be open for discussion, not necessarily just the fee, but how the fee was calculated?
Not for this particular ordinance. It's just an implementation ordinance.
So I guess that's where my legal question comes in. Would we be putting ourselves in any legal risk if we were to impose a fee, just simply to impose a fee or change a fee, whether it's up or down, if in a previous ordinance that we've already said we don't know all the ordinances out there that have fees in there, could we be at legal risk for changing something after we've already agreed upon something, should that exist out there?
This ordinance would supersede the prior ordinances, including the fee schedule that would be adopted as part of this ordinance.
I would also think that, the town would have to go through all the ordinances to look, because if this supersedes it, then I assume if there's a fee mentioned in the ordinance and it's not in our fee table, then it goes away. If the table supersedes it.
I guess, okay, you've answered that question. So I guess the concern that I have is based on the Times Square merchants. They agreed upon a specific percentage that they can see in advance. So they know what they're gonna do. They can budget ahead of time. They can plan, as opposed to getting a fee increased by some arbitrary number or down, up or down, and then not having the time to be able to budget. So that's where my concern comes in. It sounds like, as Madam Vice Mayor said, that we have a consensus to be able to add at least a second second reading of the resolution before any fees are imposed. So I'm comfortable with at least having that in there to move forward to a second reading.
And I'll tell you, Dan, what I was told, and is that the agreement with the Times Square merchants is a lease, and it's an agreement between two parties. So that is something I would, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Victor, this is, you have an agreement with somebody else that you can't change one side of that agreement.
That's correct.
You understand what I'm saying, Dan?
Well, I do, but my question was if it's codified inside an ordinance, if that agreement is within an ordinance and this ordinance supersedes that.
It doesn't. I don't think that Mr. Sanabria was using the word supersede in the way that you think. This ordinance cannot retroactively affect something. It's to govern our prospective actions, how we take them. It's organizational.
That's fair enough. I just wanted to have the discussion so that.
Yeah, I don't want to be speaking for Mr. Sanabria, but I don't think that's what he meant when he said supersede.
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
This is prospective. It cannot retroactively affect.
Okay.
I've just been
Thank
sitting
you
here
for the
reading.
clarification.
Okay,
So I would assume then, just to make sure we're clear on the point, that if we did want to change, let's say up or down for whatever, the lease rates for the Times Square merchants, then even if we had it in a table and changed the table, it wouldn't come in effect until the lease was renewed, whenever that time period would be.
Okay, well, if that's what we're talking about, let me see, just be clear. In the fee schedule, there was a rate for business extension sidewalk cafe policy per resolution 18-46 of X dollars per square foot. So apparently it was set by resolution, and that's the current rate. So just to clarify that fine point.
And it's in this fee table.
It is on page 366.
okay. Anything else, Councilman Allers out there in Colorado?
Not at this time. Thank you, sir.
All right,
Are you
well,
ready for a motion?
we're going to open up to the public.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're going to have a little public, anybody from the public wish to address this ordinance? It's so easy, I don't know why you wouldn't want to. Okay. All right, we'll close the public comment. We'll bring it back to the council. Vice Mayor, I'm ready for that motion now.
I would move that proposed ordinance 22-13 be scheduled for a second hearing on a Monday, October 3rd at 9 a.m.
Second,
I'll second that.
any further discussion? This doesn't require a roll call, does it, Victor? No. Okay, any objection to the motion?
I object.
The motion carries 4-1 with Councilman Adderholt dissenting. Okay, the last item on the agenda before we recess until 5 o'clock is the administrative agenda. And this is regarding RFP-22-21-FIN, Financial Auditing Services. This is to approve the Selection Advisory Committee's recommendation in response to RFP-22-21-FIN, Financial Auditing Services, and authorize the town manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with Malden and Jenkins to provide independent external auditor services in compliance with Florida law. I'll just preface this by saying that I am the liaison to the audit committee, and as such, as the mayor, I was appointed as per the rules as the chair of the Selection Advisory Committee. Uh, The, the, the entire audit committee composed the selection committee. We were presented with two choices for the external auditors. Maudlin and Jenkins are president auditors, and the other firm, which I can't remember the name of right now. But it was the unanimous decision of the committee to retain Maudlin and Jenkins as our outside auditors. Reason being, number one, the committee was very comfortable with their auditing of the town financial information, and also they were $30,000 less than the other bidder, so that helped. But the committee is very comfortable with this firm. They're comfortable with us, and this is the recommendation of the group. So is there a motion to approve the recommendation, and then we'll discuss it?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of the Selection Advisory Committee's recommendation.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And move and second it. Okay, discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned here until 5 o'clock.
Recess.
Recessed, excuse me. Wrong word, recessed.
We said the recess.